Welcome to Survival Horror Ambience, where the mundane becomes the unsettling and the everyday can shift into the terrifying. Today, we're diving into familiar surroundings that hide something far more sinister. Walmart. Beneath the hum of fluorescent lights and the rhythmic shuffle of shopping carts, lurk stories that'll make you think twice the next time you step inside. From chilling encounters to unnerving strangers, these stories reveal the darkness just out of sight. If you enjoyed today's stories, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more eerie tales. And if we reach 20 likes, we'll share even more chilling stories just like these. Now, let's jump in. Grab your cart, keep your eyes open, and prepare for the unexpected. Because once you enter, you may not see things the same way again. The body in the parking lot. A few years back, in my hometown in California, something happened that still haunts me to this day. It wasn't the kind of thing that should haunt someone, not really. But I walked right past a dead body. And that fact will never leave me. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was with my grandma, heading to the Walmart we always shopped at. It was one of those routine trips, no different from any other. The same familiar sights, the same old parking lot, just two people going about their business like the rest of the world. When we got there, though, something was off. There was this smell in the air. A foul, disgusting odor. Not like trash or a dead animal, but something worse. Something that made your stomach churn. I remember glancing at my grandma, her wrinkled face scrunched up in confusion, just as I was. She didn't say anything either, but I could tell she noticed it too. We both shrugged it off, as if it were just a sewer leak or something, and went about our day. We walked into the store, the scent lingering at the edge of my mind like a bad memory, but we didn't think much of it. Life went on. You move on, right? That's what you do. You dismiss things, push them aside. The smell was gone by the time we went in, and we didn't think anything of it. A few weeks later, my grandma and I were sitting in the living room, watching the news. It was just another slow news day, the usual flood of local crime stories and whatever was happening in the world. I wasn't paying much attention until I heard the words Walmart parking lot come through the speaker. I turned to my grandma. She paused the TV with the remote, her face tightening. "What's that about?" "They found a dead girl in the parking lot," the newscaster said. His voice was flat, like it was just another story, just another body. But it wasn't. Not for me. "A dead girl?" I whispered. My heart began to thud in my chest. "Yeah, right here in the parking lot. The same one we went to just a few weeks ago. Police are investigating the cause of death. No one knows how she ended up there yet." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I froze. My stomach twisted into knots, and suddenly everything came rushing back. The smell. The terrible, awful smell we'd noticed that day. It wasn't sewage. It wasn't garbage. It was her. The girl had been lying there, probably in a car, probably for days, maybe even longer, and we had walked right past her. It was right there in front of us. That smell, it was like a warning, but I hadn't recognized it. My grandma hadn't either. We had been so blind, so unaware. We had been too focused on the mundane, the everyday, that we missed the one thing that could have saved her. The news continued, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was somewhere else, back in that parking lot, standing there with my grandma, walking past that car. I could see it in my mind now, the faintest impression of a rusted-out vehicle, the windows slightly fogged, the smell hanging in the air like a cloud that we ignored. What if we'd looked closer? What if we'd noticed the smell a little earlier? Would we have done something? Would we have called the police? Or would we have just thought it was another weird thing, like so many other weird things in the world? The guilt gnawed at me, the realization that I had walked past something so horrible without even seeing it. I had been right there, so close, and I hadn't known. How could I not have known? To this day, I still can't shake the feeling. I see that Walmart every time I drive by, and the memory of that smell floods back. I can't forget it, can't let it go. The dead girl in the parking lot, the girl we walked right past, has become a ghost that lingers in the corners of my mind. I'll never know what happened to her, but I'll always wonder if there was something we could have done. The delivery. It was one of those lazy, quiet afternoons, the kind where the hours tick by slow and steady, and nothing ever seems to happen. until something does. I was sitting in the living room, flipping through channels, when a red truck pulled into the driveway, its engine rumbling like it was straining under some unseen weight. I didn't think much of it at first. A delivery, maybe. No big deal. But it wasn't the usual delivery van. No, this was different. A beat-up, old red truck with patches of rust along the fenders. The kind of truck that makes you think of a back road no one travels anymore. I peeked out through the blinds as a man stepped out. He wore a cap low over his eyes, and his clothes looked a little too big for him, like he'd borrowed them from someone much larger. He didn't knock, didn't even make eye contact with the house. Just dropped a package on the porch, climbed back into his truck, and left. Something about it felt off. It wasn't Amazon or FedEx or UPS, none of those. No branding on the truck, no uniform. Just a nondescript shadowy figure and a package. My grandma had been sitting in the other room when she saw the whole thing too. Without a second thought, she got up, opened the door, and grabbed the package. She handed it to me, her wrinkled hands shaking just a little. "This came for your mom," she said with a small smile, trying to make it seem normal. But there was something in her voice, a kind of unease I hadn't heard before. I took the package, noticing the odd way it felt. It wasn't heavy, but it had a strange density to it, like whatever was inside carried more weight than it should. It was addressed to my mom's first initial and middle name, which was strange because she only ever used her first and last name when ordering things online. Still, it was close enough that I shrugged it off. I figured she had ordered something and it just arrived early. Curiosity got the better of me, though, so I gave my mom a call. When she answered, her voice was light and casual until I mentioned the delivery. "Wait, a package?" she said, her voice now cautious. "I didn't order anything from Walmart." My stomach did a slow roll. She went on to explain that, yes, she had ordered something, but it was from Amazon, and it definitely wasn't supposed to arrive yet. It was just some dark chocolate, nothing important, and Amazon said the order hadn't even shipped yet. But this package, it felt wrong. "Open it," she said, after a moment of silence stretched thin between us. I set the box down on the kitchen counter and reached for a knife. As I sliced the tape, my hands trembled. I couldn't shake that gnawing feeling in my gut, the kind that tells you something isn't quite right, but you can't place what it is just yet. The cardboard split open with a soft rip, and inside was chocolate. 3 bars of dark chocolate, just like my mom had ordered. But something was off. The packaging was generic, almost like it had been thrown together by hand. I picked up one of the bars, turning it over in my hands. The logo was right, the brand was right, but something about it felt cheap. Staged, even. I checked the wrapping again, and that's when it really hit me. There was no address on the box, no return address, no shipping label, nothing. "Mom," I whispered, my voice barely audible, "there's no address on this." "What do you mean?" she asked, the edge of concern now rising in her voice. I repeated myself louder this time, and I heard her breathing quicken on the other end of the line. "I only use my first and last name," she said after a moment, her words heavy with confusion. "Why would it have my middle name?" I didn't have an answer. The silence between us stretched long and eerie. All I could think about was that man, the one who dropped off the package. He wasn't from Amazon. He wasn't from Walmart. Hell, I didn't even know if he was from anywhere that made sense. But he'd come to my house, left something behind, and now it was sitting in my hands. And somehow I knew it wasn't just a mistake. I glanced out the window toward the street, half expecting to see that red truck sitting there, waiting, watching. But it was gone, or so I hoped. "Call the police," my mom said, her voice shaking now. "I think someone's been watching us." And that's when it hit me. Whoever it was, they didn't just know our address. They knew the small things, the things no one should know. My mom's middle name, when she'd ordered chocolate. And now they were leaving breadcrumbs, little hints that they were much closer than we ever realized. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and the house suddenly felt too small, too quiet. I closed the box, my fingers shaking, and stared out into the empty street, if wondering just how far this thing went, and who was out there waiting for us to let our guard down. The stalker from aisle 7. There's something off about Walmart at night. The aisles seem longer, the lights too harsh, and the people, well, Let's just say you see things you can't unsee. I've been to enough Walmarts to know there's always at least one person that leaves you feeling unsettled, but nothing ever prepared me for what happened that night. It was the Thursday before Black Friday. You know the drill. People lining up, ready to fight over flat screens and blenders. My Walmart had extended hours, staying open ridiculously late to accommodate early holiday shoppers. The place was packed even at 11 p.m., but not the kind of crowd you'd expect. It was a mix of exhausted parents, college kids, and some real strange-looking characters lurking around. I had one mission: grab the last laptop on a killer Black Friday deal. I saw it, sitting there on the shelf like a golden ticket, and wasted no time reaching for it. But just as I wrapped my fingers around the box, I heard a gravelly voice behind me. "Hey, I need that," the voice croaked. I turned around and came face to face with a massive man. And I don't just mean big. I'm talking 6 feet of pure, grimy filth. His clothes were stained, like he'd been wearing them for weeks. His hair was a greasy tangle of knots, and his eyes, God, his eyes. There was something wild in them, like a cornered animal. "I'm sorry," I stammered, pulling the box closer to my chest. "It's the last one." He took a step closer. The smell hit me then, like something had crawled into his clothes and died. His face twisted into an ugly scowl. "I need that," he repeated more forcefully this time. I felt my heart pound in my chest. I wasn't used to confrontations like this. He wasn't just annoyed, he was angry, like I had personally wronged him by taking that laptop. I really need this," I said, trying to back away. "I'm sorry, man." His face reddened. "You don't need it more than I do." He yelled loud enough to make heads turn. A few shoppers cast curious glances our way, but no one did anything. I could feel the tension in the air like static before a storm. "I'm sorry," I mumbled again, walking away as fast as I could, not daring to look back. He kept yelling. "You're gonna be sorry? You think you can take what's mine? You'll see." His voice echoed through the store as I made my way to the checkout line, gripping the laptop like a lifeline. A couple of people chuckled nervously, trying to make light of the situation. "Guy's off his meds," a woman behind me said, offering me a weak smile. I nodded, trying to brush it off, but my gut told me something wasn't right. I paid for the laptop and practically ran to my car, scanning the parking lot for that guy. He was nowhere to be seen. I breathed a little easier as I drove home, but a knot of anxiety sat in the pit of my stomach. I tried to shake it off, chalk it up to the weirdness of Walmart, but something about his eyes stayed with me. I got home, and the house was dark and quiet. My mom and sister were already asleep. I stepped out into the backyard by the pool, the air cool against my skin. It was peaceful out here, the stars shimmering above, and for a moment I let myself relax. I set up the laptop on the patio table, letting the soft glow of the screen pull me away from the memory of the Walmart freak. But then, the motion light on the side of the house flicked on. I froze, my fingers hovering above the keyboard. It was probably nothing, a stray cat or raccoon. We lived right next to a small patch of woods, so animals triggered the light all the time, but something about the timing set my nerves on edge. I stood up, peering into the darkness by the side of the house. Nothing moved, but the light stayed on, casting an eerie glow over the lawn. I went inside, locking the door behind me. Better safe than sorry, I told myself. Still, the unease clung to me like a wet blanket. Just as I was settling into the living room, the blare of a car alarm shattered the silence. My car alarm? I jumped up and looked out the window. Sure enough, my Cadillac's lights were flashing, horn blaring like a siren. I grabbed my keys and pressed the panic button, but nothing happened. Cursing under my breath, I stepped outside to shut it off manually. That's when I saw the car parked in front of our house. It hadn't been there earlier. It was an old beater, something you'd see at a junkyard, not in our quiet, gated community. And in the driver's seat, barely visible under the dim streetlights, was a figure. A big figure. My blood ran cold. I stumbled back inside, locking the door with shaking hands. I ran upstairs to wake my mom, my voice a frantic whisper. "Mom, there's someone outside. I think he followed me home." My mom's face paled, her eyes wide with fear. "Are you sure?" "I saw him at Walmart. He's outside." She hurried downstairs with me, peeking through the peephole in the front door. Her breath hitched. "Oh my God," she whispered. "He's right outside." I looked too, my heart hammering in my chest. The same dirty, unhinged man from Walmart stood on our porch, his wild eyes gleaming with something dark. The doorknob rattled. He was trying to get in. "Call the police," I hissed. My mom fumbled for her phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. "Please," she whispered into the receiver. "There's a man outside our house trying to get in." Then came a loud crash from downstairs, the sound of breaking glass. My sister screamed from the top of the stairs. My mom grabbed her, pulling her close as I ran toward the den. The window was shattered, glass littering the floor. I slammed the door shut, locking it, my heart pounding in my throat. I could hear heavy footsteps inside the house. A siren wailed outside, and I ran to the front door, flinging it open just as 2 police officers stormed in. They rushed to the den, guns drawn, and found him. The man hiding behind the couch, his eyes wild with rage. They cuffed him, dragging him out of the house as he screamed profanities at me, his voice guttural and twisted. "He's not coming back," one of the officers assured me, but I could see it in their eyes. They knew as well as I did. This wasn't over, and it still haunts me. Every creak, every shadow outside my window, because sometimes the monsters follow you home. The face on the chart. I remember those missing persons charts, the ones tacked up in every Walmart, every grocery store, like a grim roll call of people who'd just vanished. Faces frozen in time, eyes pleading for answers. But I never thought I'd see my own face on one. Not ever. It was a Thursday afternoon, not much different from any other. My mom, she was a single mother, always working hard, never really had time for herself. And me, the only kid in a world that often felt too big and too cold. I was just going to go grocery shopping with her. Routine. Mundane. A break from the usual quiet of our home, or so I thought. We pulled into the Walmart parking lot about 20 minutes away from our house. The store was big, one of those sprawling boxes with flickering fluorescent lights and the smell of popcorn from the snack counter. It wasn't the kind of place you went for fun. We needed things, like always. As soon as we walked in, I felt it. That slight unease, like walking into a room where everyone's watching but pretending not to. My mom was already off, grabbing things from the shelves, so I wandered toward the wall near the entrance. Those damn missing people charts that always seemed to be plastered on the bulletin board. I never really paid much attention before, but today, something caught my eye. My heart froze. The world narrowed to a single point, and I couldn't breathe. There, in the middle of the chart, in a black and white photo that looked like it was taken in some long-forgotten era, was my face. My eyes staring back at me, wide and terrified, like I'd been caught in a moment of complete panic. I blinked, trying to make sense of it. "No," I whispered, but it came out more like a strangled sob. Someone was playing a sick joke on me. I felt my legs go weak, the blood draining from my face. The photo was me, my exact face, my exact hair. But it wasn't just my picture. It had my name too. My full name. First and middle. No way. I stumbled backward, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. Someone must have put it there as a prank, right? But what if? What if they didn't? I turned on my heel, half dazed, and searched the store. Where was my mom? Where was she? The thought of her not knowing where I was made my heart pound faster. I found her in the dairy section, looking at cartons of milk. I couldn't say a word at first. My mouth wouldn't move. When I finally grabbed her hand, I couldn't stop shaking. I dragged her to the bulletin board and pointed at the chart, my finger trembling. "Mom, look!" I croaked. She laughed, a little too loud, like she didn't understand what I was saying. "Honey, that's just a joke. It's probably some kind of, I don't know, game. You've been with me this whole time, right?" I stared at her, my heart pounding in my throat. I wanted to say something, but I couldn't find the words. How could she be so casual about this? That photo had my face, and it had my name. I tried to explain, to ask her about my dad. The man who was supposed to be my father, the one I'd never met. I had always been told he left her, that he wasn't part of the picture anymore. But something didn't add up. The way my mom had always told it, it didn't fit. She said he left. She said he wasn't around. But now, looking at her, something changed in her eyes. "I never told you he was dead," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't respond, her face going pale in an instant. I knew that look. I had seen it before. It was the look she gave me when she was hiding something. The one that said, "I've been caught." We left Walmart in silence. My mind was racing, my stomach a knot of dread. My mom acted like nothing had happened, like everything was just normal. But I knew something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. When we got home, I was still in shock. I didn't know what to think anymore. My mom, the woman I'd always known as my mother, was acting strange, like a stranger in her own skin. She told me to go to my room. It wasn't unusual. My mom often wanted to be alone after a long day, but tonight it felt different. The sounds from the kitchen drifted upstairs, a clattering, scraping. I didn't think much of it. I stayed in my room, trying to shake off the feeling of being watched. A few minutes later, my mom came in with a plate of food, rice and chicken. I didn't recognize the smell, but I was too tired to care. The second I took a bite, something was wrong. My head spun, the world tipping sideways. The room felt like it was spinning, and I blacked out. When I woke up, I was lying in the back of our old car. The headlights cut through the dark, illuminating empty roads. The windows were rolled up, and I could barely make out the blur of trees outside. It was past 2 a.m. I could tell because I saw the time on my phone. It was still my old flip phone, the one I'd had for years. My mom was driving, her face blank and focused on the road. She looked over her shoulder once, twice, and I pretended to be asleep. We drove through the night, the landscape growing more and more unfamiliar. The roads were desolate, no lights, no cars. My heart was beating so fast I thought it would explode. Then suddenly, she stopped the car. The engine went quiet, and the eerie silence of the night filled the air. My mom opened the door, the cold air rushing in. She dragged me out, pulling me by the arm. The branches scraped my back, the rough bark tearing at my skin. I was disoriented, stumbling through the dark. Where was she taking me? She didn't say a word. The woods closed in around us, and then she just left me there. She walked away, back to the car, and I saw her drive off into the distance, her headlights disappearing into the void. I stood there, alone, the cold air biting at my skin. My phone was still in my pocket, but I didn't have any proof. No one would believe me, would they? I called the police anyway. I didn't know what else to do. My mother had just abandoned me. Was she even my mother? The police came, but they found no signs of harm. No evidence that I'd been dragged through the woods, no proof that my mother had done anything to me. They took me home, and everything went back to normal, or as close to normal as it could be. But I still wonder, was she my real mother? Was there someone else out there, my real family, or was I just made to believe all of this? I never told anyone the full story. But sometimes when I look at those missing persons charts, I wonder if my face is still there, or if it ever was. Thank you for joining us on this unsettling journey through the familiar aisles of Walmart, where the mundane hides the truly bizarre. Whether it's a brush with the unknown or a mystery that refuses to be solved, these stories remind us that horror can lurk in the most ordinary places. If these tales left you looking over your shoulder or questioning your next shopping trip, be sure to hit like and subscribe. We've got plenty more eerie encounters and spine-tingling stories coming your way, so stay tuned. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of the strange and the terrifying. Until next time, keep your wits about you, because sometimes survival means being ready for anything.